It's time for Herd Mentality, the weekly episode where you control the discussion today on Locked On Bills.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino from the Draft Network, and I'm your host of Locked On Bills. Happy Tuesday to you, and thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen every day, or if you are joining us on the YouTube channel, your first watch every day. It's Herd Mentality time, the weekly episode where I respond to your questions, takes, comments, whatever you have regarding the Bills on the podcast. And so this should be really fun. We have a lot of great stuff to get into. Let's get started. First one is from Justin, who says, like all of us, I was shocked and elated when I first heard the news about Von Miller signing with the Bills. Finally, it seemed like people were choosing Buffalo, but man, it seems like every week there are new stories with Von not wanting to sign here. He was having dark thoughts on the plane ride over. He was willing to take less money to go to Dallas. He was willing to take the same money to go to LA. On the plane ride over, he was thinking about telling the Bills brass that he changed his mind. I understand it's a business and we outbid the competitors. That's all fine and good. If he wants to be here for the money, I am okay with that. But the more stories come out, the more it seems Von doesn't want to be a Bill. Does his reluctance to sign show up on the field? He's an all-time pro, so probably not. But I don't think it's a great look to have your favorite team's fancy new centerpiece repeatedly tell stories of him not wanting to be here. If you can help make sense of this, am I and others overreacting? I hope so. Well, okay, so first of all, I do have a lot to say about this, but I'm not sure that Von Miller is telling more and more people different things. I think people are reacting to the exact same quotes. So it's not like Von Miller is looking for any audience that he could find to tell people that he was reluctant to sign in Buffalo. It's just more and more outlets responding to the same thing. So let's establish that right off the bat. But here's what I think about all this. I appreciate Von Miller's honesty. I really do. These are huge, huge decisions for people. And there's a lot to factor. Salary, location. You know, this is a guy that's never lived in Western New York or on the East Coast. He's never probably spent meaningful time in Western New York to understand what he's about to get himself into. These are huge, huge decisions. And as somebody who's very calculated, I'm a very calculated and intentional person with everything that I do. It made sense to me. I could see myself responding very, very similarly if I were in his shoes. So I understand it. I really do. And I appreciate his honesty. And I respect that it's a big decision with a lot of variables. But he's here, he's committed, and he's a football guy. And he's going to love being part of the Buffalo Bills organization. He's next door neighbors with Sean McDermott. I think Von Miller is going to be just fine, and I do appreciate his honesty. I thought it was very refreshing. The next one comes from Tony. This ought to be good. Tony said, Joe, we need a herd mentality response on your wife's opinion of the Baker Mayfield trade. Well, for anybody that's new, my wife is a Carolina Panthers fan. We have been trying to convert her over to full-time Bills Mafia, but she still likes the Panthers the most. They're her favorite team. Bills are number 2. She loves the Bills. But in her heart, she's a Carolina Panthers fan first and foremost. And so it would make sense for Tony to ask this question because obviously they just traded for Baker Mayfield. And so I received the news of Baker Mayfield being traded to the Carolina Panthers while we were at the beach on vacation. And my wife and daughter and, you know, some of our other family members, they were at the pool. And I had went upstairs, you know, back into the condo, up the elevator to get like a drink or something like that. Snack, something. I went back to the room. And so while I was in the room, I found out that the trade happened. And so I knew that I would have the opportunity to go back down and tell my wife about the trade. And I know that she's not a Sam Darnold fan. I had a feeling she liked Baker Mayfield, but I didn't know for sure. And so I actually recorded her response. And so this is literally me telling her that the Panthers traded for Baker Mayfield and her response. I audio recorded it, and I'm going to share it with you now. I'm going to play it through my cell phone through the microphone. So hopefully this comes across okay.
Not a drill. Carolina Panthers have a new quarterback.
What? Is it Baker Mayfield?
Yes.
Yeah! Are you serious? Are you serious?
You only gave him a fifth-round pick.
Oh my God!
And you only have to pay him $5 million.
Oh, I'm getting drunk tonight.
Over this?
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Did you watch Baker Mayfield last 2 years?
I mean, he wasn't that good this year, but
Joe,
He's
and
better than
Sam
Sam Darnold.
Darnold right now.
I know I'm happy for him.
Is
Very
Sam
happy.
Darnold gone?
No, not yet, but he's still there.
Oh my God, I'm so excited. Order me a Baker Mayfield jersey right now. What's his contract?
1 year, $5 million.
Great. Can't wait. I love Baker Mayfield.
Pretty happy about it. She's pretty happy about it. And I think the Panthers fans should be. Baker Mayfield is not as bad as Twitter told you he was last year. The guy was injured, like significant injuries. Their offensive line was banged up. They didn't have any receivers. Their running backs were banged up. But the only thing anybody wanted to talk about with the Browns was how bad Baker Mayfield was and how he limited the team. I don't know about all that. That guy was a pretty good quarterback in 2020. He took the Chiefs to the brink in the playoffs. And so I think the Panthers did well to give up, a fifth-round pick for Baker Mayfield, only have to pay him a little bit of a salary. That team's got weapons. They've improved their offensive line. Ike McQuanu, Bradley Bozeman, Austin Corbett. To go with Taylor Moton, they've got a defense. I don't have much belief in Matt Rule as a head coach, but in a very lackluster NFC, I think the Panthers got a chance to backdoor into the playoffs with 8 or 9 wins. So I'm not jumping to order a jersey. I don't even have a Josh Allen jersey, so that should tell you something. But I think that the Panthers did well to give themselves a nice upgrade and a real chance here to compete in 2022. And the follow-up question here is a good one. This one comes from Eli, who says, if Baker beats out Sam Darnold for this season, would the Bills take action and have Sam as their backup quarterback for next season, like another Trubisky case? What do you think about it? I think 100% this is a possibility. I do expect Baker Mayfield to be the starting quarterback for the Carolina Panthers and for Sam Darnold to be an unrestricted free agent after the season. And if that happens, I don't think anybody's going to go out and sign Sam Darnold to be their starting quarterback. He hasn't done anything that would lead you to believe that. And he'll be looking for that opportunity to kind of rehab and get himself in a stable situation. Hello, Buffalo Bills, who have an opening at backup quarterback with Case Keenum, probably being a one-year thing, and Sam Darnold being Josh Allen's best friend. I think it's a great spot for Sam Darnold, and I think the Bills would be wise to get themselves something that could represent a meaningful backup quarterback. So not only do I want that to happen, I predictively think it's a slam dunk. Fully expect Sam Darnold to be the Bills' backup quarterback in 2023. Next one comes from Colin, who says, hey, Joe, I have a nagging feeling that we are conflating production with skill when it comes to Dawson Knox. This is the way I felt during Jordan Phillips' 10-sack season in Buffalo. Can you convince me that Dawson Knox is doing something special on the field and creating his own opportunities rather than just being in the right place at the right time? That is to say, is Dawson Knox doing something that other starting tight ends couldn't? I think he's at minimum a serviceable tight end, but is he really worth high-end money? Well, Colin, you've come to the right place, my guy. I have been pounding the table for Dawson Knox for several years, and I was rewarded last season for what Dawson Knox delivered. And I'll tell you what, Dawson Knox is among the most physically gifted tight ends in the NFL. 6'4", 250 pounds, an elite caliber athlete. He's more athletic than Travis Kelce. So right off the bat, understand that we are talking about an absolutely dynamic physical talent in Dawson Knox. And when you have those types of traits, that means something. And so I think his athleticism is a big reason why he's been productive, whether that's after the catch, whether that's winning down the field, separating from man coverage. Dawson Knox does those things. And so I do believe in Dawson Knox as a high-end starting tight end in the NFL. And I think his progression has been really, really good, coming from being a high school quarterback, converting to tight end at Ole Miss, where they didn't really get tight ends involved in that passing game, didn't even have a touchdown catch in college, was like the fifth option in the passing game, but you knew that he was physically gifted. That was obvious if you watched Dawson Knox. And then his growth as a player in the NFL has been very much like Josh Allen, just better and better and better every single, sometimes it feels like within chunks of the same season he got better. And it culminated with the big year 3 breakout. And I think he's going to have another awesome season. Josh Allen trusts him. He's a dynamic athlete. Sign me up for Dawson Knox. I buy in. And I was with you, Colin. I wasn't in on Jordan Phillips as a guy that you paid for 10 sacks, right? You didn't give him $10 million a season. I think that half of that would have been more reasonable for a team to sign Jordan Phillips to, and I'm glad that that's kind of the conditions that he came back to Buffalo. But I don't think that Dawson Knox is a beneficiary of any type of manufactured opportunities in Buffalo. I think he's a legit dude, and he's going to continue proving that this season. And look, that's the good news, is you have potentially this season to evaluate Dawson Knox. If you don't sign him before the year, you get yourself another year of information to help yourself make a great decision on the future of Dawson Knox with the Buffalo Bills. But I got a feeling he's going to have a great year. If you're living paycheck to paycheck or struggling to make ends meet, it can be really stressful when unexpected expenses come up. Now, Dave can help you get out of a pinch when you really need it. Dave is the banking app that can get you up to $500 instantly with extra cash. That's more money to fill up your tank, buy a wedding gift, or catch up on bills. You can finally tackle those expenses that have been stressing you out without any hangups. There's no interest and no credit check needed. Millions of people have already downloaded the Dave app to get the financial relief they need with extra cash. So if you're in a pinch and need some extra help, download Dave and think of it as a helping hand from future you. Download the Dave app from the App Store right now. That's DAVE. Sign up for an extra cash account and get up to $500 instantly. For terms and conditions, go to dave.com/legal. Instant transfer fees apply. Banking provided by Evolve. Member FDIC. Future you will thank you. The next one comes from Andrew. Andrew says, could Terrell Bernard potentially be a sneaky box safety replacement should Jordan Poyer walk after 2022? Does his skill set fit that kind of role? It's a fun question, and I think there's probably a trajectory for him to do that. I think if you consider a defense like the Carolina Panthers that run kind of this 3-3-5 hybrid slot safety type player, sort of what they do with Jeremy Chin, I think you could talk yourself into this. I just don't think the Bills really have that role in their defense. That's not a position that they use. Jordan Poyer is a do-everything player. That's part of what makes him special. You can use him as a center fielder, split zones, man coverage from the slot, or in the box. He's not just a box safety. And I'm not saying that you said that he was a box safety, but I think even just trying to replace that component of Jordan Poyer with a Terrell Bernard is really limiting what you could do with the position. I would want a more versatile player that can give me the versatility that Poyer does. Now, I do think that Terrell Bernard can play in the overhang and serve as a big nickel. And kind of what I've been preaching is the Bills can put Terrell Bernard on the field as a third linebacker, use him in the overhang, and maintain a lot of their nickel principles with a bigger player like a Terrell Bernard. So I can get behind it from that perspective, and I think that is the plan for Bernard. But I think kind of labeling him a box safety in thinking that could be a role that he would fill in Buffalo, I don't think is necessarily in the cards. Ron says last year, Allen and the first-team offense didn't play very much during preseason. I believe they only took a few snaps in the third preseason game. With the introduction of a new offensive coordinator and potentially a different playbook, do you see Allen and the first-team offense playing more this preseason to iron out some wrinkles in a live game scenario? Or do you think they repeat last year and keep the potential offensive changes under wraps until the regular season starts? I would think you'd want to get some practice with the new offense when it doesn't count before a potentially difficult nationally televised first game in Los Angeles. I think it's a fair thing to bring up, Ron, and I think there's a good chance you could see more run for the first-team offense this preseason. And I think what it really comes down to is, you want to iron out the wrinkles, but I think really what you're looking for is just the mechanics of running an offensive operation. The play call, right? Ken Dorsey in Josh Allen's ear, hearing those play calls and getting familiar with that timing in a stadium setting, in a game setting. The different coaches that will be on the sideline and, just kind of where to go after series and those types of things and how that communication all works. I think that's really the benefit of doing it. I don't think it's necessarily Josh Allen going out and throwing footballs to Stephon Diggs. I'm good. I don't need to see too much of that, but I think for the mechanics of the operation, I think that's where you get a benefit from them playing a bit more. You always have to foil that against the injury possibility, right? You would never be able to sleep if you put Josh Allen out there to get the kinks out on the offense, and in a meaningless game, he blows out his knee or something like that. That's not a world you want to live in. So maybe a few series here and there sprinkled in, not just limited to the third preseason game, but I wouldn't expect to see too much of the offense. And I do not envy Sean McDermott for having to navigate that thought exercise and do what he feels best. That's a tough decision. Mike says, I know many commentators say that because Tommy Doyle is 6'8", he is too tall to play guard. I don't think most people factor that Josh Allen is 6'5". That is only a 3-inch difference compared to other quarterbacks like Aaron Rodgers or Dak Prescott, both who are 6'2". Almost all of the guards they play with are 2 to 3 inches taller than them. Wouldn't Tommy Doyle's height difference from Josh Allen be similar, or is being 6'8" as a guard more of an issue with technique versus defensive tackles? I would love to get your thoughts. Can't wait to pick up a copy of your book. Can't wait for everybody to get this book, man. I wrote this thing. The manuscript's been done. Now I'm just waiting on it to ship and publish and all that stuff. So it's been annoying from my perspective to have written this thing and want everybody to get it. But I think that's just the deal with writing a book. It's got to be formatted, published, edited, printed, shipped, all that stuff. And it takes a lot of time. For me, I'm used to doing a podcast. I record a podcast, I upload it. It's in everyone's hands within hours, right? I write an article, I turn it into the editor, people get to read it. So this has been a hard wait for me as well. But back to your question about Tommy Doyle. Yeah, his height at 6'8", really, that's not why you're concerned about him playing guard in terms of the relationship of the quarterback and being able to see over the guard. That's not why you're concerned about a 6'8" tackle playing guard. What it really comes down to is that the action happens quicker on the interior, right? If you're an offensive tackle like a Tommy Doyle, 6'8", 35-inch arms, great athlete, right? You're used to being able to weaponize your mobility and your arm length to win on an island at tackle. Now, when you take that same player and put him on the inside where everything happens quicker and you have to find your anchor quicker and your length is somewhat mitigated because it all happens quicker, you kind of take a skill set and force a guy to have to win in different ways and in ways that don't complement their physical skill set. And so I think that's kind of the concern. Tommy Doyle as an offensive tackle, using his best two qualities in terms of length and mobility, they are mitigated on the interior. That's what it comes down to. It's not necessarily that he's 6'8" and you're worried about your quarterback seeing over him. That's really not what it comes down to at all. It's just about how the game's played on the interior and how that physical profile meshes with it. And then you contrast that to the tackle position and it's just a better fit. But I'll be honest, I'm interested. Because I want that economic option at guard. And I think Tommy Doyle, obviously physically gifted as they come, I think there's a chance, and I'm interested. Tim says, Eric Wood was recently on the Bussin' with the Boys podcast. He had a real interesting perspective on the Bills' ability to manage players' health and bodies. He expanded, saying that the Bills give more rest days than any other team in the NFL. Lastly, he believes that Diggs' touches were limited last year due to all of this. Having heard all of this, I have two questions. One, do you think if the Bills are managing Diggs' touches, do you think that may mean 7 receivers this year? And then number 2, Saffold is supposed to be a beast, but are you more concerned with our offensive line depth? And then Tim goes on to comment, after everyone listens to your show, I would recommend giving that a listen. Eric Wood seems like an elite human being. Let me respond to that. Eric Wood is awesome. Love listening to his podcast. I learn a lot from him. I've made personal changes in my own life based on listening to Eric Wood. And I've had conversations with Eric Wood, and he's a great dude. And so, yeah, I'm here for all the Eric Wood praise that you guys want to hand out, and check out his podcast as well. So your two questions, do you think, based on those comments about Diggs and potentially that meaning more 7 receivers? Well, first of all, the Bills were pretty candid about that. Josh Allen even said, and Sean McDermott said, that they were very intentional about making sure that Diggs was ready for the postseason, because in 2020, they had this big season, right? 1,500 yards, the NFL's receiving leader, and all of a sudden Cole Beasley and Stephon Diggs were banged up and had to play hurt in the postseason. And so they wanted to preserve those guys and make sure they were ready to go in the postseason last year. And the offense was really explosive in the postseason, so I think that kind of worked out. But one thing I think we forget, the Bills, I think at their core want to keep 6 receivers, but there were times last season when they had 7. And so I am not dismissing it, especially when you think about some of the hard decisions that are coming at wide receiver. So put me down for me believing there is a strong possibility of 7 receivers. Then the other question about the offensive line depth, I think I've been through this. Go back and listen to the offensive line podcast I recently did. I think this is the best group Brandon Beane's put in front of Josh Allen, and I like the depth. You're talking about really strong depth, I think, everywhere, where you have David Quessenberry as a swing tackle. You've got Ike Bucker as a reserve. Greg Manns is a quality reserve that I don't think people are familiar with. Cody Ford is a player that's had game experience and some level of upside. Greg Van Roten has started 50 games over the last 4 seasons. Tommy Doyle. I'm pretty comfortable with this Bills starting offensive line and the depth. From the people who invented healthy and tasty comes the latest gift to your taste buds. You probably tried the amazing coconut brownie chunk Built Bar, but guess what? Your friends at Built have given coconut brownie chunk the Puffs treatment. That's right, the coconut brownie chunk Built Bar flavor you love in a deliciously chewy marshmallow covered in 100% real chocolate. It's like a fluffy cloud of coconut brownie goodness. But stop drooling and listen. They're good for you. They're low calorie, low sugar, high protein, and all the way delicious. You got to try them now. Coconut brownie chunk puffs are only here for a limited time. So go to built.com right now and make sure you don't miss out. They are going fast and they are super healthy for you. Like I said, low sugar, low calorie, high in protein. And that's collagen protein, which your body absorbs more efficiently and provides a ton of health benefits. If you want to try them, go to built.com, use promo code LOCKED15. That'll get you 15% off your next order. Again, that's promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. We got some more good stuff to get to. Next one is from John, who says, seeing Harrison Phillips sign with the Vikings gives me flashbacks of Pat Williams doing the same. The Bills paid DaQuan Jones $7 million per year for 2 years, while the Vikings paid Harrison Phillips $6.5 million per year for 3 years. Their cap hits are nearly identical over the next 2 seasons. For 2021, PFF has Phillips rated higher overall at 75.2 compared to Jones at 66.4. They also have Phillips rated higher in run defense at 78.9 compared to Jones at 59.4. Phillips is only 26, while Jones is 30. To me, it makes more sense in signing our own, considering Phillips' age and strong play last season, assuming he'd have signed the same contract here that he signed with the Vikings. Phillips' sample size is smaller, but he seemed to finally become the player the Bills hoped he could when drafting him in the 3rd round in 2018. Do you see Jones as an upgrade over Phillips, or did the Bills make a mistake in letting Phillips go? I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. All right. So there's a lot of variables that play. And personally, I would rather have DaQuan Jones than Harrison Phillips. I think Harrison Phillips is a great person. Love what he meant for the locker room, for the community. All of those things are really, really great. I don't think he comes close to DaQuan Jones in terms of being a football player. I appreciate the way Harrison Phillips plays the game. He's an aggressive player. He plays hard. You're proud to have him on your team. DaQuan Jones has been a rock-solid one technique in the NFL for a long time. DaQuan Jones has started every game since 2015, except for 2017. He missed 4 games. So in 2015, 16, 18, 19, 2020, and 2021, he started every single game. This is a guy that's seen a lot of football. He's played a lot of football. He understands blocking schemes. He knows how to defend the run. He's a pro's pro. And I'm not saying that that's not true about Harrison Phillips, but in Harrison Phillips, you're talking about a guy that even last year was a healthy and active at times. There's a consistency issue when it comes to Harrison Phillips. Yeah, he played his best football down the stretch late in the season, but we've seen flashiness from Harrison Phillips and then a lot of uneven play. Injuries, right? He's had multiple significant knee injuries. And so I think for where the Bills are at in their life cycle, needing consistency from that one tech position, I mean, that has been ridiculous what's happened at one technique over the last several seasons. It's a lot like the guard thing, right? And you can look at both guard and one tech as 2 spots where Brandon Beane hasn't gotten it right. And I think he said, I'm tired of counting on these young players. I need established players that we can rely on, that know what they're doing. And so I think in DaQuan Jones, you've solidified a player that gives you every indication that he can be that for your defense and allow everything to function, right? You have a true, legit one technique that's going to make Tremaine Edmonds better. I'm in on DaQuan Jones. I really am. I'm very comfortable with him as a player, what they paid him, and moving on from Harrison Phillips. I like Harrison Phillips. I'll continue to root for him. He's a good dude. But there is a reliability and consistency component that I'm going to gravitate towards in a player like DaQuan Jones all day long. DLF says, became a daily listener this year and don't know what took me so long. Well, welcome. I'm glad you're here. I'm not going anywhere. We're here every day for you all year long talking Buffalo Bills football. So I'm glad you're on the train, and I appreciate it. My biggest question is, do you believe we are getting the red helmet again? In light of the Bengals helmet announcement, I'm hoping the Bills have a nostalgic surprise for us soon too. Thanks for all your fantastic work covering the team. Look, I don't know the answer to this, but the Bills listened to us when it came to the white face masks, right? We knew that those white face masks were a superior face mask to the gray one. It just looks so much better. And they responded. The white face masks became permanent. Now, I don't think that this is just me. I don't think the red helmet is better than the white helmet, but I would love to see it sprinkled in, just like the Bengals are going to do with the white helmet. The Houston Texans have announced a red helmet. Like, I would love to see that sprinkled in. I'd love to see the Jim Kelly 90s uniforms, with the modern stitching. Those are going to look sweet. So I would love to see them sprinkled into the rotation, right? So I think you have your standing Buffalo throwback. I want to see that once a year. I want to see the red helmet Jim Kelly outfit once a year as well, to go with the already outstanding overall uniforms that they deploy. So yeah, I hope so. I hope we do get to see that. Kyle says, I was reviewing some of the larger contracts for division rivals, and came across Tyreek Hill's contract. 4 years, $120 million, $72 million guaranteed. Seems like a humongous contract, and it is, but it follows the trend of teams tacking on a huge salary to the final year, but with minimal guarantees. In Hill's case, his final year is a $44 million salary, but only $5 million guaranteed. It seems well accepted that these contracts have a nearly completely voidable final year that is only included to boost the average salary and total contract numbers. Using Hill's case as an example, again, Miami almost certainly does not plan for him to see the final year of that contract. The Chiefs reportedly tried to do this in their contract offer to Orlando Brown, but we've seen the same thing done with our own Von Miller. I was hoping to hear your opinion on these contracts. I wonder if the tweet from Schefter reporting the huge contract value and average salary number is significant enough to influence a free agent's decision-making process. It seems hollow and something that most informed players and fans can see through. Based on reports, Orlando Brown chose not to take the bait and waited and wanted a contract that was more concrete. Do you think this is a trend that continues, or is it something that the players eventually stop prioritizing? Yeah, I think you're all over this, Kyle. I mean, there's a lot of deals that are signed in the last year or the last couple of years. In some instances, the team's not going to pay it, right? They can cut these players and, free up a ton of cap space, right? We see this all the time. And Von Miller is a good example of that, right? 6 years, $120 million. Yeah, it's really like a 3-year deal. The reason you see this happen is because players want that status, right? Do you remember, did you watch Von Miller's YouTube video about signing with Buffalo? What did he say after the deal, right? He said, so that's what it's going to say on the ticker on ESPN. He wants it to say 6 years, $120 million when we all know it's a 3-year deal. So yes, there is a status component of this to players where they want to have this contract dressed up in a way that makes it look like they got the bag. And obviously for the agent, it's a big deal to show people, wow, look, I got Von Miller at whatever, 32, 33 years old. I got him 6 years, $120 million. So yeah, that's for the players and their ego, and it's for the agent and their ego as well. But I think it is just generally understood of what's going to happen here. And so I don't know that that's going to go away. I mean, maybe you'll see different contract structures happen, right? Like, I mean, Kirk Cousins and the fully guaranteed contracts, like there could be some one-offs here and there, but I think that there is just a lot of ego involved here where smart fans like you, Kyle, you're going to take the time to look into this and understand how these contracts go. But the reality is, I think most fans, I'd say 95% of fans think that the Bills signed Von Miller to a 6-year, $120 million deal. And that's exactly what they want. Last one comes from Daniel, who says, do you feel, though, the Bills' media production coverage of particular players can give fans clues as to what their plans are for the roster? Examples such as Isaiah McKenzie or Tommy Doyle getting offseason attention this year seems indicative that they will be members of the roster, if not important members. I believe it with some cases last year, or maybe it's just the offseason brain making me desperate for Bills thoughts. I don't know. I don't know the answer to this. I think a lot of this probably comes down to accessibility, right? Like what players are going to make themselves accessible, and the team has content creators that are responsible for capturing some of these stories and showcasing players and, steering narratives with their own guys, right? That's like team media. That's a lot of what it's focused on doing. And I know that because I have a lot of friends that work in team media specifically for teams. And I understand the muzzle that's placed on them and the filter and how they want it tailored a certain way and to come across a certain way. So there is a lot of intentionality behind it, but I don't know that that's something that I would look at and say, well, the Bills did an off-season video with, I don't know, insert player, Marquez Stevenson. And because of that, that's going to be the reason that I think he makes the team. I think at the end of the day, it always goes back to your merit as a player and what you can accomplish for the team on the field. So there's definitely some intentionality behind it. There's no question. But I think it's more being able to, the team wants to showcase some of their players in a certain way to steer narratives and create a certain feeling about those players. But I'm not necessarily that I don't necessarily believe that it's an indicator that they are going to make the team or not. So that's my speculation on that question, but certainly an interesting question as well. All right, folks, that's going to do it for us here today on the podcast. Thank you so much for listening. I do appreciate it. The Bills rookies reported to camp today, or I guess if you're listening to this on Tuesday, on Monday, they reported to camp. And so this is going to start really picking up when we get a lot of news and information to respond to as the Buffalo Bills get ready for the 2022 NFL season. All right, folks. Hope you have a great rest of your day, and I look forward to catching up with you again tomorrow.